I had been gone 3 years, and she was standing in the driveway like time hadn't moved at all. Same house, same garden, same late afternoon light cutting across the yard the way it always did in July. And Victoria, my best friend's mom, the woman who had fed me dinner 4 nights a week for 6 years of my adolescence, standing at the car with grocery bags like it was any ordinary Tuesday and I hadn't just driven 14 hours to get here. She looked up when I pulled in, and something happened in that driveway that I was completely unprepared for. She wasn't the same. Or maybe I wasn't the same. Maybe 3 years and 24 years old, and whatever I had become in the time I'd been away had recalibrated something in the way I saw things. Because the woman standing in that driveway in a white sundress with her dark hair loose around her shoulders was not the woman I had filed away in my memory. She was more present, more certain, more completely, devastatingly herself. She smiled when she saw me, warm, genuine, the Victoria smile I had known since I was 16, and said, "Welcome back," like she meant every syllable. And I sat in my car for 1 second longer than I needed to, because something in my chest had just moved in a way that had absolutely no business moving. And the summer stretched out ahead of me like something that was going to change everything. I just didn't know yet how completely I meant that. My best friend Jake was out until 10. I didn't know that when I arrived. I found out standing in the kitchen doorway while Victoria unpacked groceries and told me casually that Jake had a work thing, he'd be back later. Was I hungry? I said yes before I thought about what I was saying yes to. So it was just us. Just her kitchen, which I knew as well as my own. Better, maybe. I had spent more hours in it. And the particular domestic ease of a woman completely at home in her space, moving between the counter and the stove with the unhurried confidence of someone who had never needed to perform anything for anyone. And me, standing at the kitchen island, trying to figure out what was different and failing. She handed me a knife and a cutting board and vegetables without asking, and I started chopping, and we fell into conversation the way we always had. Easy, warm, the specific comfort of people who know each other well enough to skip the surface. Except it wasn't the same. She leaned across the island to reach something, and her hair fell forward, and she pushed it back with her wrist because her hands were occupied. And for reasons I cannot fully explain, that single gesture, that completely ordinary gesture I had probably seen 100 times, hit me somewhere I was entirely unprepared for. I looked back down at the cutting board. "You've gotten quiet," she said. "Just tired," I said. "Long drive." She looked at me for a moment. "Okay," she said, in the tone of someone who doesn't entirely believe you, but isn't going to push. She went back to the stove, I went back to the cutting board, and I spent the rest of that evening being very careful about where I looked. It was Jake's idea. 3 days into my visit, Sunday afternoon, a heat wave sitting over everything, Jake suggested the pool in the backyard. Casual, obvious, the thing you do in July when the temperature hits 90. I said sure. I didn't think about it until I came downstairs and found Victoria already out there. She was lying on one of the loungers in a black one-piece swimsuit, sunglasses on, a book open on her stomach, the afternoon light across the yard, the pool water moving slightly in the breeze. I stood at the back door for a moment. Jake brushed past me with 2 cold drinks and went straight to his lounger, called something to his mom. She laughed without looking up from her book. I crossed the yard and sat on the edge of the pool and put my feet in the water, and told myself to be a normal person. It worked for about 20 minutes. Then Victoria came and sat on the pool edge 2 feet away from me to cool her feet, book still in hand, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, and we started talking. About my job, about the city, about what 3 years away does to the way you see a place, and I forgot to be careful. She was turned slightly toward me, close enough, her bare shoulder in the sun, her honey-brown eyes warm and direct and completely present. She said something that made me laugh, and I turned toward her, and we were closer than I had registered, and her eyes dropped to my mouth for just 1 second
before she looked back up. She looked back at her book immediately. "You should get in," she said. "The water's good." She stood up and walked back to her lounger. I sat on the pool edge for a long time after that. Jake fell asleep on the couch at 11. I should have gone to bed. I was tired enough. But the house was warm, and I ended up in the kitchen getting water and then standing at the back door looking at the pool in the dark for a while. I heard her on the stairs. She came into the kitchen in a loose-fitted satin sleep set, ivory, simple, her dark hair down, face clean of makeup, completely unguarded, the way people are at 11 at night in their own home, when they don't expect to find someone standing at the back door. She stopped when she saw me. "Couldn't sleep?" she said. "Not yet," I said. She moved to the counter, got a glass, filled it from the tap, drank it standing there. I stayed at the back door. The kitchen was very quiet. She set the glass down and turned and leaned against the counter and looked at me in the particular direct way she had, the way that it always made me feel like she was actually seeing you, not just looking in your direction. "You're different," she said. 3 years to do that? No. She tilted her head slightly. "I mean, you look at things differently. You look at—" She stopped. I waited. "Things," she said, finishing the sentence somewhere other than where it had been going. I crossed the kitchen slowly, stopped at the island between us. "What were you going to say?" I said. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and careful, and said, "Good night, Ryan," and walked past me toward the stairs. Her shoulder brushed mine as she passed. Deliberate or not, I was never going to know. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after her footsteps had gone quiet on the stairs. She came downstairs Saturday evening in a dress that stopped the room. Not dramatically, not in a way she intended. That was the thing about Victoria. She never dressed for effect. She just dressed like herself. And herself happened to be devastating. It was a dark green fitted midi dress, thin straps, simple. She was going out with a friend for dinner. She mentioned it at lunch, casual, just an evening out. I was in the living room when she came downstairs. She was looking at her phone, checking something, one hand smoothing the dress at her hip as she walked. She didn't look up immediately. Jake woof-whistled from the couch, the easy irreverence of a son, and she laughed and told him to stop. And looked up. Found me. I was looking at her the way I had been trying not to look at her for 2 weeks. She held it for exactly 2 seconds. Then her friend honked outside, and she picked up her bag and said, "Don't wait up," and walked out the door. Jake said something beside me on the couch. I didn't hear it. I was still looking at the door. The storm came through on a Wednesday night. Big one. The kind that knocks the power out and fills the whole house with the sound of rain and makes everything feel contained and separate from the rest of the world. Jake was at his girlfriend's. He left before the storm turned serious, so it was just the house and the rain and the two of us. She found candles in the kitchen drawer. She knew exactly where they were, of course, and I lit them while she made tea, and the power stayed out and the storm did its thing against the windows, and neither of us suggested doing anything other than sitting in the candlelit kitchen and talking. We talked for 3 hours about real things. The kind of things that only come out when the lights are off and the storm is loud and the world outside has temporarily suspended. Her marriage. She had been divorced 2 years. I hadn't known the details. She told me now. What it felt like to be 32 and starting over. What she wanted her life to look like and how different that was from what it had looked like at 25. And me. She asked about me in a way nobody else did. Specifically, carefully, like the answers actually mattered. At some point, the tea was cold and the candles were lower, and we were closer than we had started. Not dramatically, just the gradual drift of a long conversation in a small, warm light. She reached across the table to move a candle, her arm against mine for just a moment. She didn't move it away immediately, neither did I. We looked at each other in the candlelight. "Ryan," she said, softly. "I know," I said. "I don't think you do," she said. "Try me," I said. She looked at me for a long moment in the candlelight. And then she told me. She told me she had noticed me the summer before I left.
Not the way she was supposed to notice her son's best friend, not warmly, familiarly, the way you notice someone you've watched grow up. Differently. She said it plainly, the way Victoria said everything, directly, without dressing it up. That summer 3 years ago, she had looked at me one afternoon and understood that what she was feeling was not appropriate and not going away, and the only reasonable thing to do was to say nothing and wait for me to leave. So she had. She had said nothing. For 3 years. And then I came back. I sat in the candlelight and listened to her say all of this with the particular calm of someone who has rehearsed it in their head many times and is now simply delivering the truth. When she finished, I said, "Why are you telling me now?" She looked at the candle between us. "Because you're leaving again in 3 weeks," she said quietly. "And I decided that this time I didn't want to watch you go without saying it." She looked up. "Whatever you do with it." I reached across the table. My hand covered hers. She looked down at it. Then she turned her hand over and held mine back. I stood up slowly, came around the table. She turned in her chair to face me. I crouched down in front of her so we were at eye level, close, her knees almost touching my chest, the candle throwing warm light across both of us. I put my hand at her jaw. She closed her eyes. "Victoria," I said. "Don't say something responsible," she said, eyes still closed, almost a whisper. "I wasn't going to," I said. She opened her eyes, and I kissed her in the candlelight with the storm outside and her hand in mine and 3 years of distance between us that had apparently meant nothing at all.
She was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. Coffee made, sunlight through the window, the storm completely gone, the yard outside washed clean and bright. She looked up when I came in. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she held up the coffee pot and I nodded, and she poured me a cup and set it on the island, and I sat down and we looked at each other across the kitchen in the morning light. "Jake gets back at noon," she said. "I know." She looked at her own mug. "Last night was real," I said. She looked up. "It was real," I said. "Whatever comes next, that was real." She held my gaze for a moment. Then something in her face settled. Not happy exactly. Something quieter and more complete than happy. The expression of someone who has been carrying something carefully for a long time and has just been told they were right to carry it. "I'm not asking you to stay," she said. "I know you have a life." "I know you're not," I said. "And I'm not asking you to promise anything." "I know that too." She looked at me. "So, what are you asking?" I said. She was quiet for a moment. "Just don't disappear again," she said quietly. "That's all. Don't be gone for 3 years." I reached across the island and covered her hand with mine. "I won't," I said. She turned her hand over and held on.
Jake came home at noon, easy, cheerful, completely himself. He dropped his bag, grabbed food from the fridge, asked if anything interesting had happened while he was gone. "Quiet night," Victoria said. "Storm knocked the power out." "Yeah, I saw the branches," he said, already moving on. I sat at the kitchen island and watched him move through his own home, and thought about what was sitting in the middle of this kitchen that he had absolutely no idea about. My best friend, his mom. 24 years of friendship between us, from the first day of school, to his couch in this house, to every version of every year in between. I watched him pour juice and talk about his girlfriend and laugh at something on his phone, and I thought about how well I knew him, how he would react, what this would do to that 24 years. I didn't have an answer. But that evening, sitting outside on the back porch while Jake was on a call, Victoria came out and sat beside me. Not close, not touching, just present. She looked at the yard. I looked at the yard. "It's going to be complicated," she said. "Yes," I said. "He's going to need time?" "Yes." "And your friendship?" "I know," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Is it worth it to you? She said. Quietly. Honestly. Like she genuinely didn't know the answer and needed me to. I looked at her. Ask me something harder.
Three weeks went fast and slow at the same time, the way time moves when you are paying attention to it for the first time in a long time. We were careful. Around Jake, around the ordinary rhythms of the house, we were exactly what we had always been. Warm, easy, the comfortable familiarity of years. Nothing that would make Jake look twice. But in the small spaces between things, the kitchen at 7 in the morning before anyone else was up, a walk to the end of the street and back under the pretense of getting air, 20 minutes on the back porch after Jake fell asleep. In those spaces, we were honest. She told me about her marriage, the real version, the parts she hadn't told anyone. I told her about the 3 years away, the real version too, the loneliness of building a life in a city where nobody knew you, the particular hollowness of succeeding at things that didn't feel like they mattered. She listened like I mattered. I understood in those 3 weeks what it meant to be known by someone, not the version of yourself you present, the actual version, the one that stays up too late and overthinks and has never quite figured out how to be in a room without looking for the exit. She knew that version. She had apparently always known that version. On the second to last night, I asked her when she had first noticed me. Not recently, before, the first time. She thought about it for a moment. "The summer you were 19, she said. You were in the kitchen helping me with something, and you said something, I don't even remember what, and you looked at me when you said it. Really looked, like you were actually interested in what I thought." She paused. Nobody had looked at me like that in a long time. I sat with that for a moment. "I was 19, I said. "I know," she said. "That's why I didn't say anything." We sat in the dark of the backyard for a long time after that. My last morning. Car packed the night before, leaving at 9. Jake made breakfast, his version, which meant eggs slightly overcooked and toast slightly burnt and exactly the right amount of loud, and the three of us sat at the kitchen table like we had 100 times before. And it was normal, and it wasn't at all. Jake talked, easy and warm, and entirely himself. Victoria and I ate and responded and were completely present and somewhere else at the same time. When Jake went to shower, Victoria started clearing plates. I stood up to help. We worked in silence for a moment. Plates to the counter, glasses to the sink. The practiced efficiency of two people who had done this particular dance in this particular kitchen for years. She turned from the sink. I was closer than she expected. She looked up at me. "I'm not going to say goodbye like it's goodbye," she said quietly. "Good," I said, "because it isn't." She looked at me for a moment. Then she reached up and put both hands on either side of my face, warm, steady, completely intentional, and kissed me once. Soft and slow and unhurried, like she had all the time in the world, like Jake wasn't upstairs, like the car wasn't packed, like 3 years of distance hadn't just been the setup for this. Then she took her hands back, turned to the sink. "Drive safe," she said. Normal voice. Perfect composure. I stood in the kitchen for a moment. Then I picked up my keys.
I drove 14 hours back to my life. Different than the 14 hours that had brought me here. I thought about the driveway, the white sundress, the particular way late afternoon July light falls across a yard you have known your whole life, and the woman standing in it who had apparently been standing in a different place in your life than you understood. I thought about candlelight and a storm and a kitchen and her hands on my face. I thought about Jake. I called him from the road, 2 hours in, gas station somewhere in the middle. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. He said come back sooner. I said I would. I meant it differently than he understood it. 3 weeks later, Victoria texted me a photo. Just a photo, no message. The backyard in the evening light. The pool, the chairs, the particular golden quality of a summer yard at the end of the day. I looked at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "I'll be there in 2 weeks." She replied 4 minutes later with one word, "Good." That was all. That was everything. Some things don't need more than that. Some things are complete in one word from the right person at the right time. I booked the drive that night. 14 hours had never felt short.